The Scourge. Probably one of the most violent and volatile forces in Azeroth. It's been there all along. Since the very beginning, we've been seeing ghouls running around. I mean, the undead are born of the same thing, right? One of the craziest enemies we've ever fought. What's going on with the Scourge right now? We don't have a Lich King. We don't have, a Helm of Domination. So the Scourge is still there. One of the worst things I've ever fought. And it's kind of undealt with right now. The Dead Scar has been healed. The lore is still there, still evolving. But why does everybody love the Scourge so much? That's the question being answered by this video today. Tales of World of Warcraft from Nixium. Let's check this one out and get a little bit of a brush up on our history of the Scourge.
Why is it that everybody just loves the Scourge so much in World of Warcraft? If I asked you, what is the most terrifying force in Classic WoW, what immediately comes to mind? The Burning Legion with their endless demonic armies, the old gods whispering corruption from beneath the earth, the powder keg that is the Horde and the Alliance, just waiting for the right spark to send them into an open war against one another. Well, all of these have their, terrors and appeals, but none of them, at least in my opinion, come close to the undead. I'm talking about the Scourge.
Yeah, I agree.
The mindless, relentless, soul-devouring plague that turns your friends, your family, your entire kingdom into weapons against everything that you love. And in this video, I want to share with you all the 3 primary reasons I think the Scourge are the greatest villains World of Warcraft ever gave us.
I mean, the Scourge in general has led to some of the craziest historical events in WoW history. I mean, you got the culling of Strathome, obviously. That was one for sure. Arthas becoming the Lich King, kind of a pivotal moment in his life and the history of Azeroth, because yes, that eventually led him to becoming the Lich King. And then you got like the Dead Scar forming, right, as they push their way to Silvermoon, tainting the Sunwell, all that shit that happened, again, via the Scourge. We had major lore characters come out of that, like Sylvanas and everybody, all the elves that died in that. It was a major moment in WoW history, too. And then, obviously, everything happened in, what's it called, Wrath of the Lich King. Right, with the Scourge and everything that we had to go through with that. We had the early on Scourge invasions and shit that happened as the expansion was launching, and then fighting through the Scourge as we pushed into Icecrown Citadel. Like major moments, the Wrathgate, obviously, fighting the Scourge at the Wrathgate. We lost Bolvar Fordragon there. So huge moments in the game, and it's always been kind of looming as a threat, right? Something that we never really dealt with. And right now, it's kind of confusing as to what's going on with them. But we know they're still there and they could become a problem again.
And why they are so beloved by everybody all these years later, even though they haven't been center stage in the lore for a really long time.
Let's do it.
So I want to begin with where many of us first felt the true weight of the Scourge in World of Warcraft. And that is the Plague Lands.
Yeah.
Back in Classic WoW, whether you came here as a young Alliance adventurer fresh from the green lands of the South, or Forsaken slowly making your way east from the Undercity, the moment that you crossed into these blighted forests, something changed.
Yeah, I remember actually my first time interacting with the Undead and the Scourge as a human character is you're in the Alliance, right? You're running through Elwyn Forest and everything. Then across the river, you see like Darkshire over there. And if you cross over, it's clearly a higher level zone, very dangerous. It felt scary. And then if bad luck occurs and you're on the path and you run into the giant, God, what are those guys called? Big open belly fuckers with the freaking chains that they could pull you in. You were a dead man. There's one patrolling the path over there. So walking over to that area was always scary. Being in Darkshire was a freaking creepy-ass place to be. And that was like, as an Alliance player, the first real interaction with the Scourge that you had. Yeah, an abomination, yes.
The sky turned this sickly brown and green-like color. The trees became twisted black skeletons of what they once were. The ground itself looked like it was rotting beneath your boots. And then you heard it in the distance, that low, constant moaning carried on by the wind. Not wolves, not bears, but ghouls, skeletons, wraiths. The undead Scourge, hundreds of them, if not thousands, all crawling about the ruins of Anderhall like ants upon an anthill, waiting for someone foolish enough to go over there and disturb them. Now, not everybody had played.
Even the noise that fucking ghouls make when you accidentally aggro them, God, that's the shit of nightmares, man. Leveling up in classic WoW back in the day, I should say vanilla WoW, and hearing that fucking ghoul scream, you're like, oh shit, looking around, where the hell's that thing coming from? Yeah, there were so many mobs and NPCs running around here that, yeah, you just pull aggro all the time by accident.
Played Warcraft 3 before playing WoW. I certainly hadn't back in the day. And so this place in particular was terrifying. The first reason why I think that the Scourge is so beloved as a faction is just because of how much damage they did to the world during their time. You know, most villains back in classic WoW, they wanted something. The Legion, they want to conquer our world, corrupt the races upon it, and turn us into agents for their burning crusade.
Right.
The old gods, they want to twist the world into a new black empire where all minds are subjugated to the will of these ancient forces of old. The Scarlet Crusade, they want to purge the undead from Lordaeron, as well as anybody that they think stands in their way. The Scourge is the only villain of these factions that has, in a way, already won. They took Lordaeron, they took Stratholme, capital city, and their blight, it spreads all across the north of the Eastern Kingdoms. The Scourge even took the most promising paladin the world had ever known and turned him into the greatest champion of the undead.
I mean, we still haven't rebuilt Lordaeron after what happened there, right? Lordaeron's still technically a fallen kingdom. Yes, there's the Undercity, but this shit's still in ruination. It's just destroyed. So I mean, he's not wrong. And it's like almost like the Scourge is undefeated because you go in and you fight with your best fighters, right? And maybe you're getting at them. Maybe you're actually hacking through the Scourge. The only problem is every soldier in your army that falls is now raised as a soldier against you. So it's like this never-ending battle that you're inevitably going to lose, which is why, like, at the Wrathgate and everything was such a big ordeal, and the plague that came down at that time to kind of, like, destroy the Scourge at the Wrathgate. All that shit was big, significant moments. That was kind of probably our first win against the Scourge, was that battle, which actually ended in a draw because it basically got blighted the fuck out, and then Dragon Breath came and laid waste there. So it was the Scourge is still an issue. Like we said, even if you whittle them down to just a few little Scourge that are left, if they start killing people, they start growing again.
Of the undead, all before that young man ascended the frozen spire of Icecrown and became the Lich King. The Scourge didn't just kill people, okay? They stole from the world its greatest heroes, Arthas, Uther, Antonidas, and others. They overcame the greatest kingdom of the Alliance, Lordaeron, the one kingdom that was able to survive both the First and the Second War.
Right.
And what the Scourge left behind was naught but ruin, sadness, and broken dreams.
Damn. I mean, not only did it take all those great lore heroes he just mentioned, but every single Death Knight in the game is by lore definition is supposed to be raised as a Death Knight by the Lich King. At least this is how the old lore went, because they were such badass fighters during battle. Arthas the Lich King, intentionally picked people to be raised as Death Knights because he saw them as having like a great ability in battle, right? These were some of the best heroes that he saw fall in battle, and as soon as he did, he wanted to make them like his main generals and commanders. So he didn't just raise them as a ghoul again or just some random mindless undead. He raised them as a Death Knight to command his armies.
And this all leads me to the second reason why I think people love the Scourge so much. And that is simply because of what the Scourge is and what it does. I guess to explain, I believe that we all have a sense of what is beautiful in the world. We delight in life, the blooming of it, and we use the wills that we have been given to express the various powers of who we are. We paint and we sing and draw and write, and we build communities and families, and we pass on our stories from one generation to the next, doing our best to improve the world in what small ways we can with what little time that we have. But the Scourge, one of the things that makes them so delightful as a villainous force within the Warcraft universe is that there is nothing beautiful about them. there is nothing to admire. There is no comfort within the Scourge. The Scourge isn't just an army of undead. They are anti-life itself.
True.
The undead that bolster its ranks, they don't have any will of their own. Their souls are trapped forevermore within Frostmourne, the blade of the Lich King. And what powers that each creature of the Scourge possesses is nothing more than
there's nothing redeeming about anything that the Scourge offers, right? I mean, you see it in the really, really good God, what was that cinematic called? The cartoon one with oh gosh, I've drawn a fucking blank on her name now. The paladin, the freaking blood elf paladin chick. I can't remember her name now, and we literally quested with her the entire intro. But she has to kill her father, right? He gets freaking raised as Scourge, and she doesn't try to talk to him. She doesn't try to help. Yeah, Leadrin, Lady Leadrin. I don't know why the fuck I forgot her name. She doesn't try to help him or help him regain consciousness or try to get back into his mind. No, she knows he's a goner. There's nothing to be redeemed by him anymore. He is now part of the Scourge, the mindless zombie that he is, and he's going to kill her if she doesn't kill him. So she literally beats his fucking skull in. I mean, yeah, that's basically, that moment, that scene defines what we know the Scourge is, which is there's nothing that can be done to save anything that is now part of the Scourge. The only thing you can do is kill it.
Extension of the Lich King's own great power. The ghoul attacks with the ferocity of its undead master. The Lich, it conjures magic gifted to it by the Frozen Throne. The Necromancer, he raises the dead using power and wisdom taught to him and given to him by the Helm of Domination. Within the Scourge in Classic WoW, there is no expression nor individuality. There's just servants, all clamoring for favor with a dark lord whose heart has been carved from his chest. Perhaps to them, the Lich King, who is death itself made incarnate, is simply inevitable. In the end, all will be made Scourge, at least in the minds of those who dwell within its ranks. And it's better to clamor and struggle for the recognition of the Frozen Throne than to fade into the oblivion that inevitably awaits all men, or so the servants of the Lich King believe. And it's in this, only a sort of selfish vanity unites the agents of the Lich King, this fear of death and the ending of their own consciousness, and of course, the overwhelming domination of the Frozen Throne itself. And this is the second reason why I think the Scourge is so interesting, because there is no beauty in them. There is no virtue, and even should one day the undead succeed, and the whole world is awash with undead, and the Lich King's power reigns absolute, there would be nothing. Nothing but just silence.
I mean, we're going back to these lands. We're going back to Northrend and the Last Titan, and I just wonder if we're going to explore more Scourge lore, like he's mentioning. I mean, at the end of the day, that was the Lich King's goal. He was supposed to unite the entire world in Scourge. Essentially, everything is dead. If you remember, the entire Icecrown Citadel raid was supposedly Arthas allowing us into Icecrown and testing us to see if we are Azeroth's greatest champions, only so he could kill us in the end, knowing he would easily kill us, which he did. He did kill us in the raid. He totally fucking wiped out our raid. And then raise us as his greatest Death Knights. That was going to be his plan all along. He didn't account for Ashbringer chopping, Frostmourne in half and everything that happened there. But other than that, his plan came to fruition, perfectly played out exactly how he wanted it to. And all that, that big peak moment, and then we defeated him and we left. And now what the hell's going on in Northrend? Obviously, that's still the center of the Scourge. That's still where, they all kind of centered around Icecrown Citadel. There's still a lot of Scourge running around up there, but we haven't really dealt with it ever since. So maybe we will on the Last Time. Maybe we'll get some really good Scourge lore out of that expansion.
No more birds, no more insects, no more growing trees or blades of grass. Just a massive host of undead staring mindlessly up into the sky, jaws hanging open, unmoving but in the blowing wind. And there they would stare, void of their purpose and reason, until their very bodies collapsed into dust, and the Frozen Throne was shattered by time. And it's in this imagery, this haunting future, that I've always perceived since I first played WoW back in the day, since the first time I played Warcraft 3, it is in this haunting imagery that I have understood, and many have understood, that the Scourge isn't life, but true death. They are stagnation. They are, in a way, nothingness.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, the point he makes, because the truth is, if Northrend is just covered by the Scourge, and you left it for 20 years and you came back, there's not going to be anything new. There's just going to be more destruction. It's not like the Scourge are building new cities or something. We leave an old area and wow, you come back, the civilizations there have advanced, new things have been built, all that. No, Northrend would just be more Northrendy. There'd be more destruction, less Vrykul, less other mobs, or whatever the hell was there to begin with, a Tuskar and everything else, and just more destruction. Eventually, if everything becomes Scourge, then there's really nothing left standing. It's just a bunch of mindless zombies walking around.
Thus, its victory is a fate worse than the oblivion that many of its followers joined the Scourge seeking to avoid. And I admit, as I think on the Scourge more, there is just such a huge temptation in my heart just to play through Warcraft 3 again for you guys live over on Twitch. If that's something that interests you and maybe you want to see me do that, hop on over to twitch.tv/Nixium, toss me a follow, catch me while I'm live, and keep harassing me and telling me to play Warcraft 3. And yes, I'll do a playthrough for you guys if that's something that you want to see. And this leads me to the third reason why I think the Scourge is so beloved by so many, and that is the fact that the Scourge has a face, a tragic face, that many of us can possibly relate to or sympathize with.
Arthas.
There's a lot of villains in the Warcraft universe, the old gods, the Legion, the Void, and so on and so forth, but I don't think any of them invoke such a feeling of tragedy as the Scourge does. There are so many stories.
I always say the story of Arthas Menethil is the best story in all of WoW. I think everyone can say that pretty confidently, and I always said that if Blizzard ever made another WoW story or a WoW movie or WoW like cinematic universe, whatever they decide to do with the WoW IP, I always felt like the story of Arthas Menethil would be the best one to tell, because it's it's the one that most people who don't even play this game could easily follow and understand. You got a prince, noble intentions, falls through bad shit, ends up making bad decisions with trying to save his people, all that, and then he ends up falling to corruption. Right? It's like a Darth Vader-esque story, very similar. And I think people who don't even play this game would easily follow it and understand it. That's why I always said, man, a Wrath of the Lich King series or something would do freaking great.
All around classic WoW of NPCs that have lost family members, husbands and wives and children, ghosts that still linger in haunted corners of the world, reliving the torments of their death or waiting for a person to come back that is never coming home. We hear of great dreams and goals and beliefs that people once had, and then the Scourge came and ruined it all, destroyed it. And then there is the greatest story of them all, the story of Arthas Menethil, paladin of the Silver Hand, trained by Uther the Lightbringer, who was put in a position where he saw his kingdom being destroyed by this relentless tide of undead, and he didn't know what to do or what was the best choice. And ultimately, driven by a desire to save his homeland, Arthas became his home's great enemy. He purged his own people at Stratholme.
Right.
He chased Mal'Ganis to the shores of Northrend.
To the ends of the earth. And what happens if he doesn't do that, by the way? Like, I think, there's a consensus that he made the wrong decision trying to cull Stratholme. Okay, killing his own people probably wasn't the best move. But if he doesn't do it, what the hell happens? Does the Scourge spread faster? Does the inevitable end that we all came to, the fall of Lordaeron and everything else, does that still come, but it comes quicker? Yeah, I don't know. Like, there's no way to really know what was happening. Uther obviously disagreed with him, so did Jaina. There's that whole conversation they have at the gates of Stratholme. But for sure, I would say his culling did somewhat halt the spread of the Scourge at the time. I would think so. I mean, they culled the entire city, burned all the fucking poisoned wheat and grain and all that. And then, he went to Northrend on his expedition and he did what he did there. But at the end of the day, his culling of Stratholme, I would say probably did Hinder the spread of the Scourge?
Let us lay waste to this
Mecha
realm.
King, thank you for the follow, man. Welcome to our Scourge. But it didn't stop the inevitable, which was the Scourge was going to spread no matter what.
He intentionally stranded his own men on the frozen continent so that way they could chase down the dreadlord that they had been hunting, and in doing so, Arthas took up an accursed rune blade and became the first Death Knight of the Frozen Throne. He returned home. He killed his father. He encouraged and even led the further scourging of his country until eventually his road took him north once more to the spire of Icecrown, which he ascended before becoming the Lich King. I think even today people look at the story of Arthas and they debate whether or not Arthas even did anything wrong. What was Arthas supposed to do at Stratholme? Was he supposed to just watch as his people turned into undead, adding more to the ranks of the Scourge?
I mean, what do? You try to quarantine the city, but you really do risk like any single thing getting out would spread this shit even further. I mean, even if there's like a Scourge-plagued squirrel that gets, it's not just the people that you would have to keep. You'd have to keep everything in that city. And by the way, you're sentencing those people to death. At the say, like, yes, you didn't kill them, but by quarantining the city off, everybody who doesn't already infected is going to get infected. It's inevitable. And they're all going to turn to mindless zombies eventually. So that was Arthas' reasoning behind going out and culling the city is, okay, these people are goners. There's no chance any of them are going to get out of here alive. So the best option is to stop it here and can cull the city. Again, that decision's always going to be debated. I just don't think it's possible for them to have quarantined the city off, and keep it. I mean, shit, we couldn't even do it during COVID. Imagine COVID was the Scourge. We'd all been fucked, right?
Or was he...
I'm not going to get into the rest of the fucking COVID and the politics behind it, but I'm just saying, it's very hard to quarantine a population.
Right, in taking on the burden of killing his own people and ending them before they could become undead that would become a further threat.
He would have
to
called the
Lordaeron.
Wuhan labs.
Was Arthas right in disobeying Uther and his father and staying in Northrend to hunt down Mal'Ganis? If he hadn't, what would Mal'Ganis have done? What sort of schemes and plots would that dreadlord have undertaken to further the destruction of the north of the Eastern Kingdoms? Was Arthas even wrong with taking up Frostmourne, a blade that apparently had the power to save his homeland, or so he had been told? Arthas even willingly giving up his own soul to the blade, believing that it would give him the power to finally kill the dreadlord and go home.
Right.
I think Arthas is such a fascinating character for people because for many, they can relate to him. For many, they look at the choices that he made, and maybe they would have made them too. And they see how fate took Arthas to his ultimate end, to him becoming the Lich King, something he never intended, something that he didn't even want to be, a power that he wasn't even seeking. And people find this to be so heart-wrenching and so tragic, and they love it. Even killing Arthas, as cruel and tyrannical as he was, it was very bittersweet, because we knew that this was a noble paladin at one point who was trying to save his people.
Yeah, his first line, he calls out to his father. Yeah, it's a pretty sad moment, actually, when you kill him as a boss, no doubt. Arthas simply had to show a little humanity and accept that Uther would not understand unless he saw the citizens twist and turn to undeath with his own eyes. Let it sink in that this was a threat that was fast-acting and could not simply be contained. Yes, and it's true that they hadn't really seen the effects of the Scourge yet. Yeah, they were trying to understand what the hell was going on. This is a new threat. Does everybody turn into Scourge? Is it inevitable that this shit is gonna, wipe people out? Is there an immunity some people might have? There were a lot of things they didn't know yet. So instead of back-talking, he could have had a "see, told ya" moment. Yeah, that's true, but you got to remember, Arthas was like, I don't know how, I think he was in his 20s. He was super young. He was a prince pushed into, this power moment where he feels like he had to make a decision, and of course he's going to make a rash decision. Of course he's not going to wait to explain shit and think things through. He's a young guy trying to do what he thought was right in the moment. So instead of back talking, dumb are we?
But who ended up going down a dark path. Arthas' story.
To be fair, the Dreadlord tricked yeah, that's true too, right? It wasn't just Arthas making the decision. He had a fucking Dreadlord messing with his head. So there's also that. Like, he was totally getting duped at the same time.
Is one of many stories where good intentions are turned to evil. And I think that everybody can come up with another example of that. From Boromir trying to take the ring from Frodo to defend his country, to maybe something that you've had happen in your own personal life. The Scourge is so beloved by the community because, really, if you think about it from a story perspective, in the beginning, the Scourge was nothing more than like an attack dog that the Burning Legion was unleashing upon Azeroth.
Right.
It didn't really have any purpose or character or depth behind it other than just to consume life and destroy. It's why I said earlier in the video that even if the Scourge were to win in its goals, what would the world even look like? It would just be a world without life, a world that is stagnant, cold, and unmoving. But then you enter the story of the Lich King, the story of Arthas Menethil and his corruption, and suddenly the Scourge takes on an entirely different character.
He puts a
Suddenly
face on the
Scourge feels more personal.
Yeah.
At least for me, because of what the Scourge has succeeded in doing and all the people that it's killed, in its depressing and gloomy goals, and in its title character, Arthas the Lich King. At least for me, all of those things make the Scourge fascinating as an enemy faction. But if nothing else, the Scourge is just cool. Zombies and skeletons
True.
and monsters and a dark lord of undeath seated atop a frozen throne. Scourge is just awesome with its magic and necromancers and all that it does. And they've always been one of my favorite enemies to fight in
Same.
World of Warcraft. What do you guys think, though? What is your favorite enemy faction in WoW? Is it Xalatath and her Void Spawn? Is it the Burning Legion? Is it the Old Gods? Let me know down in the comment section below. And thanks for watching, everybody.
Xalatath is cool, but she doesn't hold a candle to Arthas. I mean, Jesus, come on. No, Arthas' story is very... We can't relate to Xalatath as much. Yeah, she was mortal. I guess she got fucked up as a kid and then, became Xalatath, the harbinger of the void and all that shit. But Arthas' story is much more human, much more relatable. Like he says in the video, you can relate to his decisions a little bit. You don't have to agree with them, but you can understand them. It's got like a Thanos, kind of thing to it, where you understand why he's doing what he's doing, even if you don't think it's the right thing to do. A great thing. I can't wait to see if we get more Scourge lore out of Northrend. We already got some more, a little bit out of the Dead Scar healing and everything, showing that the Scourge's, inevitableness can eventually be healed off. So some of this lore is getting advanced. Some of it's being told in a new way. We'll see what ends up happening when we do go back to Northrend of the Last Titan. Nice video overall, though, from Nixia.